Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that we now know who it is Raven Chapman is going to be fighting in the next fight. It appears that the Czech Republic's own Lucy Sedlackova has come back to the table, come back into the picture, back into the frame. You will recall that 8 months ago, they were supposed to have been fighting, but it was Lucy Sedlackova that ended up withdrawing.
And this was already a dangerous fight for Lucy Sedlackova 8 months ago. 8 months later, having not fought at all this entire calendar year, it's that much more dangerous, as Raven Chapman sports a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, and 2 knockouts.
Having already seen action 2 times this calendar year. Once against Linda Leica to kick off the year, then again in the middle against then unbeaten Lila Furtado of Brazil. Raven Chapman won the fight in dominant fashion, and now she looks to cap off the year with the Lucy Sedlackova fight, the one she was supposed to have some months ago.
Lucy Sedlackova of the Czech Republic, a good, experienced fighter, a serviceable fighter, sporting a professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, and 6 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 17 professional bouts. She's got more pro bouts than Raven Chapman does,
though not more talent than Raven Chapman has. This is a quality over quantity kind of situation. Lucy is a good and serviceable fighter, the same age as Raven Chapman, and she has her virtues. But I've already had my first look at this fight, and 8 months later,
it's not going to get any easier. Lucy Sedlackova was last in action in May of last year. That's saying that it's already been over a year's time since she last saw action.
If the fight would have went through 8 months ago on schedule, Lucy would not have amassed quite as much ring rust as she has 8 months later. So it doesn't make the situation any easier for Lucy Sedlackova.
While Raven's been fighting and winning and garnering even more professional experience.
And it's good. It's good that Frank Warren is getting her out there, keeping her busy, keeping her active, so
I don't mind it.
I certainly don't mind the fight. I relish the opportunity to watch Raven Chapman in action, though as far as what I think about the fight itself, and what I think about Lucy.
Lucy's a solid textbook boxer.
A solid, orthodox fighter. Shows the jab, keeps the right hand high to protect that side of her face while she shows the jab.
Good dimensions for the weight.
Good coordination, good movement, though her defense is a bit leaky.
She can be caught. Punches a bit wide.
Her straight punches are all right. Her jab's all right, but those sweeping hooks,
they can be countered. Mid-range to inside, she's vulnerable.
It's an area of weakness for Lucy, whereas for Raven, it's an area of strength. It just so happens that Raven Chapman, she's very good mid-range to inside. That just so happens to be her sweet spot.
Raven, who's a little bit more nuanced, she's got more subtleties.
Fighting at a slight crouch and angling off to the side as she closes the distance as to not get hit with any oncoming shots.
She's not as upright as Lucy Sedlackova.
Not as textbook, not as conventional as Lucy Sedlackova. No, Raven is more fidgety, more herky-jerky.
While closing the distance, she's definitely aggressive and she's definitely a mid-range to inside fighter. That much you can see, but she's a tricky target.
While she's barreling forward looking to crowd her opponent, it can look like she's standing right in front of you.
She's tricky.
Even when she is in the pocket with her opponent, she's angling off to the side, staying off the line.
Doubling and tripling up on the jab.
Keeping the opponent moving, keeping the opponent guessing, working.
She can put a girl under a lot of pressure.
Raven's a body puncher, a spiteful one. Lucy Sedlackova is nowhere near as fluid or as capable mid-range to inside as Raven is. Raven is quite comfortable there.
To the eye, a lot faster than Lucy.
There's rapid-fire combinations in the pocket. You will notice that Raven Chapman's punches are a lot shorter and a lot tighter than what you get from Lucy in the pocket.
She seems to land with more authority. Lucy Sedlackova may have more knockouts on paper than Raven, but I'd wager that Raven's the bigger puncher.
Faster, too. Better on the inside.
More defensible.
More fluid. This is what I mean when I say that Raven is more nuanced than Lucy Sedlackova. Lucy's more textbook, more upright.
I mean, she's a solid fighter. She's not bad.
I see a situation where Raven Chapman, she's going to stay in character. She's going to stay that aggressive customer. In all likelihood, Raven will be the aggressor and Lucy will be the defender. And Lucy won't be able to keep Raven Chapman out.
out of the pocket.
Raven's gonna come crashing in. And because Lucy's not as fluid, as capable as Raven is in the pocket, in all likelihood, she's gonna get overwhelmed. She'll get
Flustered.
outworked. This being billed as a 10-rounder, Raven Chapman will have plenty of time to pile up the points and pile on the damage.
So I like Raven Chapman to win.
Conservatively, I like Raven Chapman on points, though I'll go as far as saying that I don't rule out a knockout because she'll have more time.
She's gonna have 10 rounds to bust this girl up.
More time to pile up points and pile on the damage. So a knockout could happen, though conservatively, I'm going with Raven Chapman to win. I'm going with Raven Chapman by way of a points decision. At minimum, I think she can outwork and fluster Lucy Sedlackova. In the men's junior middleweight division, Charlo versus Bakram Murtazaliev has been stalled as no progress has been made and a purse bid looms for the IBF mandatory title fight.
I told you I was skeptical as to whether or not this fight would happen.
A mandatory fight more than 3 years in the making now appears destined for a purse bid hearing. BoxingScene.com has learned that very little progress has been made in the ordered Charlo versus Bakram Murtazaliev junior middleweight championship clash. The IBF instructed the respective camps for both boxers to enter talks beginning of October 10th, but the 30-day period, which ends November 9th, has not produced much dialogue between the camps. Charlo fights under the PBC banner. TGB Promotions takes the lead for most of its events, as well as the point of contact for most of the ordered fights involving PBC fighters not specifically tied to a promoter or manager.
Whereas Bakram Murtazaliev, he's promoted by Main Events and managed by Aegis Climax. Aegis, he does a lot of business with Top Rank.
Although his last 5 fights have come on PBC-branded events, at least 3 of which were part of a step-aside package as Charlo sought to fully unify the division, at this point in the juncture, when the PBC are in limbo, they don't have a broadcast partner, there's no network money coming in, how do they convince Bakram Murtazaliev to stand down now?
Is that even still an option?
For the last 3 years, that's what he's been doing. Bakram Murtazaliev has been standing down, he's been stepping aside, the IBF has been complicit with this. The IBF seems to me to have given Charlo more leniency than they give a lot of other fighters, a lot of other champions. But now that the well is running dry and the PBC are between networks, they're on the hunt for a broadcast partner.
There's a looming purse bid approaching, and the deadline is drawing closer and closer.
This bout would mark Charlo's first mandatory title defense during a second title reign, should he agree to proceed with the fight. He already relinquished the WBO junior middleweight title in lieu of a previously scheduled and ultimately cancelled clash versus Australia's Tim Tszyu. He instead moved up 2 weight classes for a bigger payday versus fully unified super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez. Charlo entered the ring under an agreement that he would be announced as the recognized undisputed champion before the WBO would strip him of the title. He then proceeded to drop a landslide decision defeat to Alvarez, though he was able to retain his WBA, WBC, and IBF junior middleweight titles.
And the IBF title might be the next one that he drops.
He may not have a choice. At a time when the PBC don't have a broadcast partner, they're not on any particular network, at least not officially, not right now. That means no network money is coming in. That means there may not be any money to win the rights to the fight, go to a purse bid, all that jazz.
So are they going to fritter away what resources they still have left just to win the rights to this thing? This is not a hot ticket.
Russia's Murtazaliev has long had in his possession verified documentation that he was owed a title shot. The written agreement was in place as Charlo entered the last of 3 consecutive unification bouts in his 10th round knockout of Brian Castano. In their rematch last May 14th in Carson, California, the 2 previously met in July 2021 when their full unification bout ended in a split decision draw. Charlo's team then agreed to next face Murtazaliev following his desired rematch with Castano. However, those plans were compromised when the WBO trumped the IBF's mandatory
With their own.
Tim Tszyu. And at a time when they have no network money coming in, can they afford to fritter away what resources they still have left, what little bit of money they might still have, just to win the rights to this thing? Or would it be cheaper and more cost feasible to simply drop the belt and let Bakram Murtazaliev go on his own way?
Think about how this breaks down. You go to the purse bid And you never know who's gonna be there. Maybe Matchroom wants to stick it to you, or maybe Top Rank.
Then you have to try to beat those guys out just to keep the rights for the fight. Or maybe none of them bother you. Maybe it's just you at the purse bid. Maybe you're the only ones interested in this fight. On what platform would you air it anyway?
The cheapest alternative might be just dropping the belt, letting it go, letting Bakram have it.
Bakram Murtazaliev, who has been the mandatory challenger since a November 2019 win over Jorge Fortea in their title eliminator. He has since fought 4 times, each one buried on PBC non-televised undercards, and on at least 3 occasions with a step-aside package to allow Charlo to fully unify the division. Charlo is officially out of Teflon as he has exhausted all prior exceptions. IBF rules state that all parties must commit to a fight once ordered by sanctioning bodies. Ranked challengers who refuse are demoted in the rankings and barred from participating in sanctioned bouts for a minimum of 6 months. Now, we know that Bakram's not going to withdraw. Bakram wants his title shot.
But does Jermel want to give it to him? Can he? And if he can't, we all know what happened.
It's an important distinction given his vocal desire for higher profile fights such as undisputed welterweight champion Terence Crawford, who has expressed an interest in moving up in weight through more specifically for a fight versus Canelo Alvarez. If this entire ordeal does not result in a fight between Jermel Charlo and Bakram Murtazaliev, the title is forfeit and Bakram would then end up fighting Germany's own Jack Colkay for the newly vacated IBF title. And that scenario seems conceivable to me because it's hard to imagine that at this time the PBC is going to fritter away dollars on a fight like this.
Because this is not a hot ticket, and at this time, in terms of TV money, the PBC ain't got 2 wooden nickels to rub together.
So here's the skinny. Jermel Charlo literally just fought not but a few weeks ago. Jermel just got demoralized by Canelo Alvarez, and on that premise, I don't even know if he's in any hurry to come back. He might want to spend some of that money that he made from that fight. In tandem with the PBC perhaps not even having the resources at this time to do this fight, the IBF title might go vacant, at which point Aegis Climas will allow his fighter to have that fight with Jack Colkay.
Probably ends up going to Germany to do it, what Jack is based out of. And if he wins, Aegis has himself a new champion, and maybe he funnels him over to Top Ranker. Maybe he funnels him over to Matchroom. Maybe he funnels him wherever somebody can use him.
Maybe Tim Tszyu and the people at No Limit in Australia make him an offer that he can't refuse. Tim Tszyu, like Bakram Murtazaliev, at least his last few fights, has had an arrangement, a tenuous arrangement, with the PBC. But now that Showtime's out of boxing and they don't have a broadcast partner and Tim's not going to let them slow him down, maybe he unifies with the winner of Murtazaliev versus Colkay, if it comes to that.
Tim never needed Showtime to begin with. Most of the money that he makes domestically in his own neck of the woods.
PBC don't even have a broadcast partner. Then what the hell does he need them for? It's all very immaterial right now. And we'll see what shakes out at 154 pounds in the next calendar year. As it pertains to Al Heyman's stable of refugees, boxing insider Rick Glaser stated, "I would love to see the expressions on the fighters' faces when Heyman tells them how little they'll be paid for fights starting next year, as there will be no guaranteed TV or streaming revenues, and those are the very few that get offered fights. You'll see."
Because a good number of those guys might not. They might not get offered any fights at all, any fight dates, at which point they're gonna have to float elsewhere to someone who can use them.
Do you remember what I told you? That Showtime leaving the sport of boxing is not necessarily the doomsday scenario, not by itself. That so long as Al Heyman can find a new network for his fighters to fight on, he's still in the race. He's still in the game. But he's got to hurry up. He's got to do it in a jiffy because these guys ain't going to wait around forever. And as soon as they realize that you ain't got nothing for them, they're going to leave. Bakram Murtazaliev almost immediately comes to mind because while the PBC didn't have some big investment in his career, they had the guy fighting on non-televised portions of their cards. While they weren't that invested in him, he's gonna float away now. That's what he's gonna do. The only reason he was there is because he was due a title shot and they were paying him to stand down. Now that they can't do that,
And if they can't pay for the Charlo fight, if they can't pay to do that, Charlo doesn't give him a shot, the title is forfeit, and he goes his own way. He floats away.
fighters have already started floating away the last few months. Gerald Washington was on a Matchroom show, as was Adam Kovnasky. These were guys you normally saw on PBC cards. They were on Matchroom shows the last time I saw them.
It's already started. It started months ago.
And you say that, well, these fighters that you're talking about, these aren't fighters that are a big part of the PBC's bottom line. The PBC can afford to discard them. They can afford to lose them. But how long before they start losing fighters that they are invested in? Fighters they're invested in but cannot accommodate. Will the PBC survive this? I don't have those answers. I just know that if Al Heyman doesn't hurry up and get these fighters a home for their fights, a good number of them, they're gonna start to leave.
The rumor is they've been offered a distribution deal from Amazon, but it's non-committal. All they'll do is market their fights and distribute them, but they're not making an investment into the PBC stable, into PBC boxing. There's also a separate rumor that the PBC has been talking to Netflix.
It was Rick Glaser who said, that's all smoke and mirrors. The ones putting those rumors out there are the PBC themselves in the hopes that Amazon will hear them and perhaps sweeten the deal they've offered to the PBC. It's a negotiation tactic, at least according to Rick.
So let's say Netflix doesn't actually pick these people up and they decide to go ahead with that Amazon distribution deal. What's that gonna look like?
6 or 7 pay-per-views annually, maybe more, on the Amazon platform, with fully loaded, double-stuffed undercards, cramming as many of their fighters as they can cram just to get those guys out there, the ones they care enough about.
The ones they can use.
And the ones they can't, as far as the ones they can't, in a scenario like this one, where all they've got is an Amazon distribution deal, those guys, they'll have to hit the road, hit the bricks, go elsewhere.
The PBC would be left with no choice but to discard the dead weight and only keep what they can use. And let me tell you, that's not a whole lot.
And the fighters, the ones they keep, that end up on the undercards of these pay-per-views, they would essentially be working off the net, without guarantees.
The ones that stay, on that predication, there might be a lot that decide to leave.
It could come to that if Al doesn't get a network for his fighters.